Good morning. I'm joined today by FBI Director Chris Wray, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, Zach Terwilliger, and the Acting Assistant Director in charge of the Washington Field Office, James Dawson. We are here to announce the indictment of Alexander Cote and Al-Shafi al-Sheikh. Cote and al-Sheikh were members of the notoriously brutal ISIS hostage-taking cell that became known as the Beatles, a name their captives gave to them because of their British accents. The defendants are charged with terrorism offenses related to hostage-taking and killing of 4 Americans, as well as citizens of Great Britain and Japan. For over a year, Cote and al-Sheikh were held in Iraq by the U.S. military under the law of armed conflict. I'm pleased to confirm that they are now in FBI custody and will soon appear in federal court in the Eastern District of Virginia. Today is a good day, but it is also a solemn one. Today, we remember the 4 innocent Americans whose lives were taken by ISIS. James Wright Foley, Stephen Joel Sutloff, Peter Edward Kasich, and Kayla Jean Mueller. Many around the world are familiar with the barbaric circumstances of their deaths. But we will not remember these Americans for the way they died. We will remember them for the way they lived their good and decent lives. James Foley was a print and video journalist who was covering the civil war in Syria. He had previously served as a conflict zone correspondent in Iraq and then in Libya. James was a former elementary school teacher. Stephen Sutloff was a journalist who covered the Middle East and was in Syria reporting on the refugee crisis. According to a longtime friend, he was drawn to the region to, quote, give a voice to the people who didn't have one, close quote. Stephen was the grandson of Holocaust survivors who inspired him to be that voice. Peter Kasich was in Syria working for a humanitarian organization that he founded to deliver food and medical aid to the refugees. He had previously served as an elite airborne ranger in the U.S. Army, which included service in Iraq. Kayla Mueller was a humanitarian aid worker and human rights activist who, inspired by her faith, devoted much of her young life to serving those in need both at home and abroad. As President Trump shared during his 2020 State of the Union address, the American warriors who conducted the military operation that resulted in the death of ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi were so inspired by Kayla that they named the mission Task Force 814, a reference to August 14th, Kayla's birthday. Today's announcement is the result of many years of hard work in the pursuit of justice for these Americans. We have been inspired by their memories and moved by the determination and grit of their families. Families which will never rest until justice is done. To them, I say this, neither will we. Although we cannot bring back your children, we will do all that we can, obtain justice for them, for you, and for all Americans. As for Cote and al-Sheikh, like many other terrorists before them, they have underestimated the American resolve to obtain justice for our fellow citizens who are harmed or killed by terrorists anywhere in the world. These men will now be brought before a United States court to face justice for the depraved acts alleged against them in the indictment. As for their ringleader, Mohammed Emwazi, infamously known as Jihadi John, he faced a different kind of American resolve, the mighty reach of our military, which successfully targeted him in an airstrike several years ago. My message to other terrorists is this: if you harm an American, you will face the same fate as these men. You will face American arms in the battlefield. And if you survive that, you will face American justice in an American courtroom and the prospect of many years in an American prison. Either way, you will never live in peace. You will be pursued to the ends of the earth. No matter how long it takes, we will never forget We will never quit. To the American people, today's announcement is a reminder of the threat that we continue to face from radical Islamic terrorism. These terrorists despise the freedoms and the way of life we cherish and are hell-bent on imposing their ideologies on a world that continues to reject them. Although our nation faces a variety of national security threats from many quarters, we will not relent in our efforts to protect America and her citizens from the threat posed by terrorists. Today's announcement would not have been possible without the relentless effort of countless dedicated prosecutors, agents, and analysts who are the bedrock of the Department of Justice. I want to thank the prosecutors from the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Eastern District of Virginia, from my own National Security Division, and all of the many FBI agents and analysts who have worked tirelessly on this case. I also want to thank the Office of International Affairs and the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, both of which assisted with important aspects of this investigation. The Attorney General wanted me to convey that the support of the United Kingdom's Home Secretaries, Sajid Javid and Priti Patel, was critical to moving this investigation and prosecution forward, and he extends his sincerest gratitude for their unwavering commitment to the pursuit of justice in this case. We also want to thank all of our international partners who have come forward thus far with evidence, and I would encourage any others with evidence to come forward as well. We understand that the justice we seek in this case will extend to many people in numerous other countries around the world, and we humbly and enthusiastically accept that responsibility. We all have our part to do our part in confronting and defeating ISIS. Just last week, the department announced our significant successes in repatriating and prosecuting a number of U.S. citizens who went to Syria to join and support ISIS and were detained by the Syrian democratic forces. The United States has been a leader in taking responsibility for its citizens who left to join ISIS. And as the case we are announcing today highlights, when we have the evidence to do so, we will also take responsibility for prosecuting those non-U.S. citizens who have injured or killed Americans anywhere in the world. If you have American blood in your veins, or you have American blood on your hands, you will face American justice. This department has successfully prosecuted hundreds of defendants since 9/11 for terrorism-related offenses in our federal courts, and we will continue to do so. Finally, I want to acknowledge the Departments of State and the Department of Defense. We will continue to work together with them and our other partners in the U.S. government to combat the scourge of terrorism. The step we take today is just that, a step. But it is a big step, and I can assure you that the women and men of the Department of Justice will not stop until justice is won. Thank you. Director Wray.
Good morning. Today's announcement makes clear once again that combating terrorism remains the FBI's top priority, and that the entire United States government remains committed to bringing to justice anyone who harms our citizens. We showed that resolve to the world last week by repatriating Americans who had traveled to Syria to support ISIS so that they will face charges here. And today we're demonstrating that resolve by bringing to our shores two men who left Britain to become ISIS terrorists. Now they're going to face justice in an American court of law for crimes against American citizens. Not long after these terrorists were captured in 2018, the parents of their American victims wrote the following about their loved ones, and I quote, "One by one, our children were taken from us by the hateful criminals of the Islamic State. Jim, Stephen, Peter, and Kayla were like so many of your own sons and daughters. They were four unique, passionate young Americans, and all risked their lives pursuing a greater good. The families of those victims have suffered the painful loss of their loved ones at the hands of brutal killers. And while their pain may never fully subside, today, with the announcement of this indictment, we're beginning to bring them the justice they deserve. But we owe these families more than justice. We owe them our gratitude. And I say that because their advocacy for their loved ones has led to positive changes in how our government supports and partners with victims' families. One of those changes was the creation a few years ago of the Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell. This multi-agency team, based at FBI headquarters, represents our government's unified approach to recovering American hostages abroad. Its single focus is to bring these hostages home safely and partner with their families in the recovery effort. A key part of that fusion cell is the family engagement team. That team not only coordinates support to family members of hostages during times of agony and uncertainty, it also supports hostages and families once the crisis is over. The FBI and our partners are working tirelessly every day to recover all U.S. hostages held abroad, and we won't rest until we see a similar resolution for justice against all those responsible for holding Americans captive, especially when those captives' lives are taken. Today, I want to also thank the men and women of the FBI and our domestic and international partners for their unflagging efforts to investigate, charge, and ultimately hold these two men responsible for their crimes. Over the course of this investigation and many others like it, these dedicated professionals put themselves at risk, conducting interviews and collecting evidence to build the cases that ultimately led us to where we are today, with these two men facing justice in the United States. Like Assistant Attorney General Demers, and based on conversations I've had on a number of occasions, including on the phone just this morning with the Attorney General, I know the Attorney General joins us in particularly thanking our British counterparts and our international partners in working with the United States to bring charges in our criminal justice system. We mourn not only our American victims, but also the British victims, David Haynes and Alan Henning, and victims of all nations who suffered unimaginable cruelty at the hands of ISIS. Let there be no doubt, the FBI, the U.S. government, and our partners remain vigilant in the fight against terrorism, including the threat from ISIS. Today, ISIS is still trying to radicalize people here in the United States and elsewhere through online propaganda and their global network of supporters. Their goal is to motivate people to launch attacks against Western targets wherever they are, using any means available. But as today's announcement shows, the FBI and our partners, both here and overseas, will continue to relentlessly pursue these terrorists and anyone who chooses to support terrorist organizations like ISIS, no matter where they are and no matter how long it takes. Now I'll turn things over to Zach Terwilliger, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, to provide a little bit more details about the indictment itself.
Thank you, Director Wray. First, I want to thank Attorney General Barr for his steadfast leadership and support of this investigation and prosecution. Let me be very clear. This day does not happen without Attorney General Barr and his resolve and commitment to seeing that these individuals were brought to justice. As Director Wray mentioned, my name is Zach Terwilliger. I'm the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, located just across the Potomac River in Alexandria. It's with a heavy heart that we're here today, and I wish we weren't. But if these alleged atrocities indeed happened, I'm proud to be here as a representative of the United States and our criminal justice system. As many of you are now aware, yesterday, an 8-count criminal indictment was returned in the Eastern District of Virginia that charged 2 alleged terrorists, Alexander Cote and Al-Shafi Al-Sheikh, with the following felony offenses: conspiracy to commit hostage-taking resulting in death, hostage-taking resulting in death, 1 count for each of the American hostages: James Wright Foley, Kayla Jean Mueller, Stephen Joel Sotloff, and Peter Edward Kassig. Count 6, conspiracy to murder United States citizens outside of the United States. Count 7, conspiracy to provide material support to terrorists in the form of hostage-taking resulting in death, and murder. Count 8, conspiracy to provide material support to a terrorist organization. If convicted, the defendants face a maximum penalty of life in prison for each count of conviction. Pursuant to well-known protections provided by our constitutional republic and its system of criminal justice, Cote and El Sheikh are presumed innocent unless and until proven otherwise. All that I'm about to recount now are allegations and can be found in the four corners of the 24-page indictment, which was unsealed just a moment ago. As stated in that charging document, these alleged terrorists both grew up in the United Kingdom, where they became radicalized. Their role within the ISIS terrorist organization was that of being part of a brutal hostage-taking scheme by which American, European, and Asian citizens were taken hostage from approximately 2012 to 2015. Their alleged criminal acts include conspiring to commit hostage-taking resulting in death and conspiring to murder American citizens James Foley, Kayla Mueller, Stephen Sotloff, and Peter Kassig. As part of the conspiracy, their vicious acts and those of co-conspirators Mohammed Emwazi and CC1 are alleged to include the following: forced witnessing of murders, mock executions, shocks via electric taser, beatings, amongst other brutal acts. Also a well-established principle in American jurisprudence, co-conspirators, like these defendants, may be held liable for the foreseeable acts of their co-conspirators, such as Emwazi, that took place during the course of the conspiracy. As stated in detail, Cote, El Sheikh, Emwazi, and CC1 facilitated hostage-taking, ransom demands, abuse, and the murder of Americans, Europeans, and Asian citizens in order to further their terrorist agenda and that of ISIS. The brutal acts of beheading were captured by the ISIS media propaganda machine and disseminated to achieve their aims of jihad. Further, as detailed in the indictment, part of the alleged horrific conditions of confinement, the self-proclaimed leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, also made it a point to repeatedly sexually assault American citizen Kayla Jean Mueller. As you know, al-Baghdadi was killed on or about October 26, 2019, in a United States military operation named in honor of Kayla and her birthday, August 14th, Operation 814. For these acts, these two alleged terrorists will now face the American justice system. Later today, we expect these defendants to make their initial appearance a few miles away in Alexandria, Virginia. At that hearing, they will be informed of the charges against them. They will be provided with counsel if they cannot afford it. They will receive medical care and be housed in a sanitary facility and be provided with 3 meals a day, all coupled with the due process of law. All things denied to James, Kayla, Stephen, and Peter, and the other British and Japanese victims named in the indictment. Like Director Wray, in preparation for today, I reviewed some prose that really captured what today is all about. And I quote, "They should be brought to America to face our justice system, and that is what our children would have wanted. Give them the fair trial that makes our nation great. That would be the best way to honor our children. Ensuring that truth and justice find their way out of this tragic story would mean that the Islamic State will never have the last word." Well, Diane and John, Paula and Ed, Marcia and Carl, and Shirley and Art. It's now a certainty. ISIS will not have the last word when it comes to your children. You will. Attorney General Demerson.
First question is, how important was the British evidence that the Justice Department has been, fighting for 5 years to try to get from the UK government, and would we be here today without it? And then, what does this case say about the ability of the Justice Department to bring all terrorist cases to U.S. civilian courts for trial?
So thanks, Ryan. I think we decided that if we were going to do this case, we were going to tell the fullest story we could of what these defendants did, and we were going to put on the strongest case possible. And with the British evidence, I think we can do that very well. As for your second question, as you know, the department has prosecuted hundreds of terrorists in federal court since 9/11. We have done so successfully. We've protected classified information when we've needed to, and we've gotten justice for many victims and many convictions. You can expect us to continue to do so.